All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. I'm Nancy Lancaster. I'm the Senior Open Source Community Manager at VMware, and I focus on the Carvel tool suite as well as some other projects here at VMware. Just a reminder, when you're engaging in these meetings, please adhere to the code of conduct. It is being recorded, and we do post these to YouTube afterwards on our playlist. Just going to go through the agenda. If we have anything at the end of the meeting today that doesn't get discussed, or if there's anyone that has any questions in particular after today's meeting, I invite you to attend our Carvel office hours, which we're starting for the first time this week. They're going to be held every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And that's also listed here in the agenda. Now I will kick it off to Aaron Hurley. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that he can share his and get us going with the status updates in the rest of the agenda.
All right. So as Nancy mentioned, if you have any topics that you want to talk about today, please add them to this discussion topics section here at the bottom. We'll try to carve out time to cover those. Yeah, starting with status updates, not planning to go deep into any of these, just kind of wanted to provide a way to click into these if you want to learn a bit more, but you can kind of see we have a handful of things that are in progress. The primary plan for today was just to really use this as like an iteration planning meeting. So discuss what's top of the backlog for us, discuss it as a team, do some pointing. Then there's also this section on triage help. So these are, I think, community issues that kind of need discussion to further what our plans are for these. So we'll see if we have time, but it would be nice if we could start at least one of those. But let's get started with the backlog then. So we'll start with the image package recursive bundles track. I think we'll plan to review a couple of these stories, just at least so we have enough runway for the week. So starting with this first one, Joao, would you like to present these? You're self-muted.
Yeah, I said. Thanks for the reminder. Cool. So this is we're going to talk a little bit about our recursive bundles, our nested bundle track, just so we start to give you more or less like an idea where we are before we start doing this story. So we already have the initial story is already in our code base that allows you to push a bundle that contains other bundles. In PR, we currently have two other stories. One that is when you pull a bundle that contains other bundles, it pulls them into a particular folder in your machine. And the other story that's also in PR is the ability to copy an image to a tar and then pick up that tar and push it into a registry. So this is what the world will look like in terms of functionality when we arrive to this story. And this story is giving image package the ability to copy these bundles from registry to registry. Okay, so if we go through more or less the acceptance criteria, we'll be able to see that a user, when it copies a recursive bundle between repositories using this flag, we are hiding like all this functionality behind the flag, --experimental recursive bundles. And all the commands will provide this one except pool. Pool will not need this flag. We discussed it a little bit and we thought it was not needed. It didn't bring anything. But for all the copy commands in the push, you need to use this in order to copy and to push recursive bundles. So if we look at what the story says, is basically if you have a bundle, if you create a bundle that points and that incorporates two other bundles, when you push this bundle to a registry, it succeeds. But then if you try to do an image copy from that repo to a different one, you should be able to see like the following output. This is more or less the same in terms of like output that we had before. It will show you all the images now instead of only the images for images from images. But the output in itself, it's not going to change from the current version. And that's it. So this is our first scenario. So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to jump in. So the other scenario is we need to ensure that we...
Hey, Joao, I did have a quick question. When we use the -- experimental recursive bundle, does that then imply that the bundle is recursive? Does that imply a -r?
It doesn't. Like we decided that it doesn't make sense for it to be able to copy just a bundle. So when you copy a bundle, being it recursive or not, being it nested or not, the behavior that we expect is to copy all the images from all the bundles that you're trying to move. So there will be no recursive -r or -- recursive flag as we have on the pool.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So the second scenario is just to ensure that if you're copying an image, if you're copying a bundle that doesn't contain nested bundles on it, it just works. So it's just like, make sure when you're implementing this, make sure it did not break functionality. And the third scenario is a scenario that is going to be temporary right now. And it is going to be if you try to copy a bundle, a nested bundle from one registry, from one repo to another repo, and you do not provide the -- experimental recursive bundle flag, it will fail. So just make sure that if this functionality will never got out of this flag, that we would fail, right? And you'll have like error messages there. So this is just like a temporary thing that will be removed when we get to the last story of the set of stories. Cool. So I think that's more or less it.
What about localizing the images log file? Is that part of this story? Should we get that working? Is that no?
This story is
part of
like
another story.
So like there's this stories of copy do not really care about the pool yet. There's a specific story that will take care of the pool output. Not only the output, but also those files. But yeah. So does anyone have any more questions about the story?
From a technical implementation perspective, are there going to be any changes except from just adding this flag and an error message? Like I feel like scenario 1 and 2 just might come for free. I don't know. Is that your intuition?
It's not going to come for free because the way we have structured the retrieval of the images, we'll have to copy a little bit of code that currently only exists in one place and put it into another.
Okay, so when we build the image set, it's not recursing and building the entire image set.
Think about it. It might get it for free. Let me just
okay, doesn't matter. But I'm just wondering what your intuition was.
Yeah. In theory, like I think it's going like so. This story and the next two stories that we have in the pipeline are stories that finish the copy behavior for all our options, and the implementation needed for them, it's going to be very small, right? Because like the bulk of the work of copying is already built in, So
Any other questions, or are folks ready to point? Cool, let's point. 3, 2, 1, shoot. It's mostly ones and a 2. Stephen, do you want to speak to the 2?
Yeah, I'm content to come down. This is just from my own lack of knowledge about the way things currently work.
Okay. There aren't any further questions, then we'll put this as a 1. Cool, let's move to the second.
Before you open the next story, can you go back to the Zen Hub? Cool. So like this is what it looks like, the next set of stories that I was talking about. This initial one, this is also a copy story. This is also a copy story here. And then in this story, we will start thinking about what happens when you pull a bundle that contains other bundles and what it looks like and what are the impacts on the inner bundles and what should we do on those inner bundles. So that's what we have in terms of stories. There's like another story that is going to be just, we need to add documentation on the image package website for all this work. And then the last story of it all is going to be, we will remove this experimental flag and make this available to everybody. So this story is going to be the last story of the set that will allow us to, by default, provide this functionality. Sorry, Heron.
No, thank you. Thank you for that overview. That's helpful. Cool. So we'll dive into the second copy story.
So as we talked before, we now are able to copy a bundle from a repo to a tar and from a tar to the repo again. The second story of this set allows us to copy a bundle from a repo to another repo. Now we have another story that allows us to copy from a repo to another repo, but instead of us providing the -b flag, we're going to provide a bundle lock file. Okay, so it is going to be more or less the same thing, but the way we're inputting things and we're giving things to image package is going to be a little bit different, right? So, I'm not sure if I said this the last time. The pre-requirements for all these stories are the same, and when I wrote them, I tried to make sure that they make sense throughout all the stories, so that it is easier when you're trying to implement. You know that our bundle 1 will always contain one image in bundle 2, for example, and that bundle 2 is only going to contain one image, and then there are 2 other images there, right? Like some parts do not need all these setup, but I decided to carry it over so that we have like a common thread on our pre-requirements. So this is also, again, I think it's a 3 scenario story, where our first scenario is we create our recursive bundle, and when we create our recursive bundle, we add our little flag -o there that will create a bundle lock file for us. So instead of us now just providing a -b flag that contains the other registry that we want to copy from, what we want to do is we want to copy from the lock file that basically contains this nice string here with a little bit more information. It will copy from this log file into this new repo here. The output is going to be the same for copy. So this is exactly the same. So the second scenario here is to make sure that we didn't break the prior behavior. So when you create a log file, it just works. So like we created previously this bundle number 2 this is what a log file looks like. A bundle log file looks like. We create this bundle log file. We already created previously this bundle 2 on our pre-requirements up there. And then when you try to copy it and do not provide any flag here, because this is not like a nest, but it's not a recursive bundle. It just keeps on working. And the last scenario again is if you try to copy a bundle of bundles without using the -- experimental flag, it will fail. Cool. Oh, there's a fourth scenario. Look at that. Oh, yeah, that's the fourth scenario. If you try to copy it using like an image, if you try to copy a bundle that contains bundles using the image log file, it should fail as well.
Looking at scenario 3, looking at the error message, it looks like we want to have the entire command given, but with a hint saying use the experimental flag. In terms of like just making implementation a bit simpler, could we just say, instead of figuring out what the initial command was, just say, you know, dash dash, you know, just use the dash dash experimental flag next time?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
I had a question about scenario 4. So in the previous story, you could copy from registry to registry, and during that copy process, we have listed when a bundle is nested, the reference to that bundle is in the images lock file. And here, it seems like we're preventing from putting bundles into the images lock file. So wouldn't there be bundles in the images lock file if it was a nested bundle?
Yes, but this is a different scenario. So when you're providing an image lock as your input to image package, you're not providing a bundle of bundles. You're just providing a list of bundles. And what we're trying to do here is try to differentiate between you want to copy a group of images, for example, and that's when you would eventually use an image lock as your input to a copy command, from a situation where you want to copy a bundle that contains other bundles on it. So there's the distinction is just like, if you provide an image lock file as an input, we expect you to be copying images. If you are providing bundle lock or a repo to start with, we expect to have bundles on it, or just pointing to bundles.
Yeah, I feel like if I was distributing some parent bundle that had bundles in its images lock, and I provided a lock file to someone I was distributing it to, I would want them to be able to use that lock file to relocate the dependencies. I don't know if I'm missing the point here. It's like, yeah, they could use the original bundle to reference to grab everything, but shouldn't they also be able to use the lock file to grab all the dependencies as well?
Eventually they could, but that's why we generate a bundle lock instead of an images lock. So when you do a push, like for example, in this case here,
Yeah,
it will generate a bundle lock and not an image lock file. It's just like more of a, if you want to transport the bundle in a particular way, you get one particular input. If you want to transport a group of images, then you get a different input. You get like an images log file.
Yeah, the difference in scenarios makes sense to me now. I think it's just was hard for me to see at first.
Any other questions?
I do have a note there, like this already exists, scenario number 4 already exists, but it has like a little bit of a different message, and it's just like to make it more point in more, like easier to understand. I think currently it says like you should use -b or something like that for bundles. So like this is just a little bit of a change of a text on scenario 4.
One small thing, if I remember correctly, like for scenario 3, for the push commands, the way to output a lock file is with the lock output flag, not the -o flag. I think that might be just a mistake there. If I remember correctly.
It is possible. I'll check it out.
Cool. Shall we point? All right. 3, 2, 1, shoot. Got 1s and a 2. I can't see Stevens. It's cut out. Okay, 1. Carrie, do you want to speak to the 2?
Yeah, I pointed to because I felt like there were several cases here that need to be covered. So that to me seemed like a lot of sort of different scenarios that need to be implemented as part of this. So that increased the complexity for me. But I'm willing to go down to a 1 as well.
Does anyone from the 1 side want to share why they pointed a 1?
I can share. I pointed a 1 because assuming the previous story has been implemented and done, this story to me just really seems one changes. Instead of getting a bundle name from a flag, you get a bundle name from a YAML file, which is something we already support. So that should almost just work. And then like most of the changes, the bigger ones were just like the scenario 3 and scenario 4, but it just seems like for scenario 4, we're just we're rewording an existing error message, and for scenario 3, we're just gonna fail and ask them to pass a recursive flag. So it didn't seem like a lot of changes or any risks.
Thank you. Cool. Let's maybe point once more, just to see where folks are landing. Is it 3, 2, 1, shoot? 1s, cool. Let's see, we'll go to the next copy story.
Yes, Gary, you were right, and I just updated the stories.
Nice catch.
All right, so like this is the last story for the copy. And from this point on, like after we finish this story, you should be able to use all the current functionality that you have with the copy right now with the new recursive bundles. So this story is to allow you to copy a bundle using a bundle log file into a tar. So instead of being able to copy it from the repo to a tar, now we want to copy it using the bundle log to a tar. So this is again like the more or less the same scenarios here. So our first scenario is going to be we are going to push a bundle that points to other bundles, and we're going to generate our bundle log file right there, and then we're going to try to copy it into a tar, and we're going to see that everything gets copied. So like all the images, as you can see, like there's just a little bit of a difference of UI between what we had before when we were copying to repo and what we're copying to a tar right now. This is already there, so that there's nothing that needs to happen extra. So this is our first scenario. Our second scenario is to ensure that the prior behavior that existed, it's still here, it's still working. And then we have a third scenario, that's the failure. If you try to copy to a tar a bundle that contains other bundles, so it fails in the same way. So we can also did what Dennis suggested and change this message to just say like, oh, just put the minus recursive flag on it instead of adding the full command. And our fourth scenario, same thing with image lock and same error with image lock. So very similar to the previous one, but instead of our target being a repository, it's going to be a tar file. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sorry if this feels repetitive and the stories look pretty much similar, but in the end, it's just like to make sure that we have all the features that currently image package implements, but there's like a lot of knobs that you can turn here and there.
This feels more thorough than it does repetitive to me, so appreciate the attention to detail.
All right, well, if there aren't any questions, how about we throw points? 3, 2, 1, shoot. Ones and a 0. John, do you want to speak to the 0?
Yeah, I'm like teetering between a 0 and a 1. It's just, I think the 1 would be useful to do exploratory testing. And if there's nips and tucks, it's also an invitation to like come back after a little bit of calendar time to maybe there's little refactorings that can happen or something like that. But intrinsically, it didn't seem like there was any additional complexity to digest. So 1's fine for me, but that's just kind of my thinking.
Cool. Does anyone else want to share thoughts?
I felt similarly in that it's just about a 0 to me, but I think it's worth having that 1 point to ensure that all of these scenarios laid out work as they're supposed to. And we take some time to come back and review that it now does do all the things that copy is supposed to do.
Cool. Seems like we had a pretty good rough consensus of 1. So let's keep moving. Do a quick check. I don't see any topics yet. So if anyone has a topic, we'll maybe check once more. Let's see. Should we do one more on the recursive bundles track?
Yeah, given our velocity, probably makes sense. Right, we get 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we have 3 there, and I think there's already a couple are in review. So maybe we're okay with recursive bundles. Cool. Let's jump over to YTT schemas then. And we have this first story. Schema supports floating types.
Stephen, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can certainly talk to this one. Let's start going through the big heading categories here. So the motivation for this one is that currently our schemas allow you to define types for what are acceptable values. And right now those are maps and scalars, you have Booleans, but you can't actually define any number with a non-zero fractional portion. So you can define integers, but not 1.5. So this story is all about adding that, setting it into your schema and accepting a reasonable data value. So the first acceptance criteria there is if you put in your schema, let me go grab the annotation tools. If you put in your schema, nope, that's not doing what I want it is. Close enough. If you put in your schema some value here, which has a fraction, then we parse it as a fraction. It has a floating point number, and so we accept floating point numbers in your data values. You can also, in YAML, explicitly specify a type here as !float, and that should pass okay. So if you run this command, given the above files, then they should be substituted properly, and you get a reasonable data value replacement. Integers are a strict subset of floating point numbers. So therefore, you should also be allowed to use just a regular 13 as a 4.2. I'm going to assume that made sense. However, that doesn't mean that you can put whatever you want in. If we move down to that next criteria here, there is still type checking going on. So you really do need to provide a valid number if you specify in your schema a x.y number. So a string or an array, these should both lead to error messages, which are hopefully pretty similar to the ones we've seen before. It's just another value is not what the schema expected, found a thing expected. A float, I'm not positive on the wording of this one. I've been considering number, but I think that's fine to leave to the implementing pair. This should also include some documentation. So you need to be able to search and navigate to YTT docs to find that, oh, I actually can specify more than just an integer for a number type. One last implementation note here is that when we output, that's not a great arrow, but when we output, we're going to lose some type data if you don't provide a non-zero fraction. So if we say we expect a 1.2, that is of type float. If a data value is exactly 1, then our parsing output is going to also be exactly 1. So if you really cared, you're technically losing that information that you started with a schema that was a float and you got an integer. But because integers are strict subsets of floating points, I don't think that's a concern for us.
Any questions from folks?
My head went to like float overflow concerns. Like, should this be a float 64-bit? Like, what if we put more than 32 million? Or and then are there any things about the number of decimal points that we should allow or not allow? I don't know. It's just like not things we don't even have to concern. We just let Starlark figure it out.
The one piece of information I have about this is the JSON spec does not define any bounds for upper or lower limits of numbers, including the fractional parts. And I think because we're able to load JSON, we should be able to support all of those numbers as well. So I guess arbitrarily large or small.
I can add a little context to that. The Go implementation of Starlark, I think it emits a float 64. So there is a practical limit to what Starlark will handle. But we didn't think that when we were talking about it, we didn't think that that was going to be any practical limit for the uses that we see YTT in.
Can you go back to the implementation note? So what does it mean to be output with type int? Does it mean that we don't want to have any dot zeros in our representation? What does that mean?
I think that would be completely fine. I know that YAML in general would try to get rid of it. So if you just run as a data value, I don't know, 1.0, and then use that in a template of data.values foo, the output would be just 1. And so this was mostly just to say, it's okay if that happens for us. But if we end up preserving it, probably a bonus.
Okay. So like generally more like in terms of like implementation wise, is there anything from this already implemented, or are there like prior art on how to manage these cases?
We're currently doing type inferencing on many other types. So this would be adding another case check to all of the places where we get a document, map, or array item. And then just comparing the, I guess, the float 64 type with whether the value can be cast to it.
Currently, they are just interfaces, right? So like we have like that case that says it is a string, it is a whatever. So we just need to add 2 more cases, one for int and one for float 64. Okay.
Int should already exist. So it'll just be making sure that
Cool. How about a round of pointing? All right. 3, 2, 1, shoot. Got some 2s, got a 1. Maybe start with the 2 side. Anyone want to share?
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Garrett. Sorry.
All good. I saw the documentation as a reason to bump it up from a high 2 to, a high 1 to a 2. See John nodding. So that's about it.
Cool. Anyone want to share thoughts from the 1 side?
I pointed as a 1 since there's already prior art from other types that we can kind of grasp onto. So I think that lowers the complexity for me. I think it is like a lot of points in the code that need to change, but the fact that we have prior art.
Cool. Let's try pointing once more to see if anyone's shifted. So 3, 2, 1, shoot. All right, we still have mostly 2s. Let's see, check in once more. Okay, no discussion topics were added. Let's see. So we have a 3-pointer in flight. We just pointed a 2-pointer. Does that sound sufficient for this week for schemas? Yeah.
I would think it is.
Cool. So in that case, I think we'll jump over to, what is this? Issues not in an epic.
the repo filter might also be preventing you from finding something.
Oh, okay. I have it limited to, I guess, like the lifecycle tools right now. So these are a number of the, I guess, kind of like issues that maybe don't have like an epic that's tied to it, but a collection of, enhancements or bug fixes that we still want to prioritize and address. We've discussed a few of these, but this one moved its way up a little bit. So I think this would be helpful to chat with. Oh, we just lost Ben. But so this is retain executable flag on files and bundle. Does anyone want to present this?
I can give it a shot if nobody else wants to talk about it. Okay, so So like there's some information on that Slack thread, but basically when we are creating the files in disk, when you're pulling something, when you're pulling like an image, we change the permissions for all the folders to 0700 and all the files to 0600. So what this story is about is that sometimes you want to have executables, and you don't want those executables to change permissions, right? You don't want to lose that. So what this story is asking for is a way, not a way, it's asking for image package to preserve. If a file has executable flag, we should keep that flag. So this is more or less what this is all about. Oh, by the way, this is like very specific for tars.
Any thoughts or questions?
See, we have a comment there about only adding that execution permission if it had that same permission previously. Should we be doing that same thing for all permissions?
So 6 gives you read and write on a file. The only permission that we're really lacking is the execute. In the end, we could try to prevent people from having write if they didn't had it before, but nobody asked for that, so I'm not sure. But that's something that we can add to the story as well.
Yeah, is it incorrectly to presume that the deeper ask is whatever bits are set are the bits we keep? That we would like lstat the file as it comes in and copy over those permission bits? Is there a reason to, there may be, this is not a rhetorical question. Is there potentially a reason here for filtering those bits?
In the end, the write flag doesn't cause you a lot of problems if you do not preserve it, while the execute one causes you a lot of problems because you will not be able to execute a file, right? So from like the ask that Ben had and the problem that Ben was having was specifically with the execute flag. That's what the ask there is for. In the end, we can expand that and say like, oh, if you didn't have write, we just give you 5 or 4. I don't remember what it is. What's the number for that? But it's like one of the two, right? So I don't see any reason not to preserve the lack of write flag.
I have another question. It's really around, I don't know if it's a concern we should care about, but it's about the reproducibility of this. So now we have the same input processed with 2 different versions of image package, and they're going to produce different digests essentially. I don't know if that's a concern, and I think they're going to produce different digests because we're, modifying the metadata ever so slightly, adding, 7 instead of 6 potentially. Is that a concern?
Where does this affect the image contents?
When we write the tar entry, the layer digest would change because now inside the layer, the file is going to have a different, permission associated to it. So now the digest changed, and now the entire image, because that layer changes, everything else is slightly different. It's not reproducibly going to produce the same output, even though the input's not changed.
So this affects the pool, right? Like when you're copying things with a tar and so on, you're copying the tar, so you're not changing the tar at all. The tar, like the tar layers, nothing will change because that information The production of the tar layers is not done by us, and we do not touch it. This is on the flip side on a pull. When you pull an image and you pull it to disk, that's when we change the permissions, and we hard code the permissions to 0700 and 0600, depending on folder file.
Okay, so maybe I read it wrong. I thought it was like when we push and copy it, make sure to like change the files, but or make sure that the flags stay the same. This is like keep pushing and copying the way we're doing things today, but on a pull, when you pull it down, how would you know what the original permission was when you pull it down?
We just tar it up, so like the permissions will go with it. Will go with the files when you tar it up.
But I might be misunderstanding it. I would have thought if the tar entry has the permission, like each tar entry has a header, and the layer of the entry would change. Like the layer being there's a zip file inside the tar file, and that has a digest, which is the contents of everything in that entry.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess
think we
the
need to
good
go
news,
check it.
the good news is it is a different bundle or a different package. So I think that's behavior by design. But I don't mean to dismiss your point about the fact that I think that I'm going to get exactly the same thing back. I guess we'd have to unpack that scenario a little bit more to see whether or not a need has just popped up. But I wouldn't want it the other way. Wouldn't want it so that you could change permissions on a file and that not affect the digest. Do we know why we originally hard coded those permission bits?
I think the Slack thread that's linked here was about reproducibility. But here's a pretty brief explanation.
As a rationale, is that what you?
Yeah.
I see. Oh, and it's not caught in your screen share.
Oh, sorry.
Jump to your Slack app.
Right. Let's try that again. Not the right link. So this could be something like folks could follow up Dimitri to dig deeper as to what, just another level as to why. I guess I'm trying to think of, do we want to include this type of discovery work within the story itself? Or do we want to capture like an exploration outside of the story?
I'm thinking in this one in particular, it might shift the implementation. So.
Would it shift the implementation, or would it? So like, it feels like that there are, this will, so okay, so you have one version of image package and another version of image package that contains this fix, right? The second one is going to produce, if you using the same folder, it's going to produce two different digests. correct? So what we're talking here is more like should we do this or not? Not the implementation is going to be the same. It's going to be, we're going to look at that number and we're going to change it. I don't think there's much else that we can do in terms of implementation for this story. I think it's more like, is this something that we are okay with? Having two different versions of image package that generate from the same folder two different digests or not?
Yeah, I think we, at a minimum, just clearly communicate it's a breaking change for the release notes. Maybe that should be a label. Oh, I can't add labels here, can I?
You're not in Tracker anymore, son.
And it's just an executable flag. We're not going to try to figure out what the original read write or any other bits like the sticky bit or anything else associated to that file. It's just, if it had an execute bit, put the execute bit in. Otherwise, it's 600.
One thing that I know more or less for sure is that we don't want to have permissions at group level or all level. We want to cut those out. That's something that I think that's what we want to enforce. And I think in terms of like the right, we can talk about it and see if that's something that we want to have there or not. And that could be part of the story. Just make sure that this is just specific to execution, or if you want to add the right as well as part of the story.
So what would help here? Do people, again, want to, I guess, include some of this discovery work in here, or could factor in the complexity of that when we point?
Maybe just add as a comment with what Joe just said, which is for the owner permission, make sure to retain the owner permission on a file. I think it's write, execute. Why not just throw in read as well?
I don't think you can have a file with read without having, no, you cannot have a file without read and write it, just write.
I can chmod +1 on a file and it just has execute.
Is it a usable file though? So.
I don't think that's the question though. Could somebody have put it into a bundle? Sure.
I mean, in terms of implementation, we'll just make it simpler. Like whatever's on the ownership permission flag, just use that instead of like, I only care about doing the math around the write and execute bit. But maybe I'm just looking past something.
I'm cool with leaving it up to whoever picks up this story to figure out what the right UX is.
Is there
Okay.
a reason why we would not want to do the right, like maintain the right ownership? Is there a risk to that? Otherwise, I could see Dennis's point, like, you know, making sure it behaves the same, like preserving that rights throughout.
Personally, I don't see like any problem in just keeping the ownership part. It was just, we just talked about this because of execute, because that was the only scenario that we believed it was like more relevant than like all the other scenarios. If you don't have rights, is that going to be like a major problem? In theory, no. If you only have, if you don't have read, then I think it's just like there's a problem with your bundle, because I'm not sure you can do anything about it with that file, right? But in the end, the problem that you'll have is going to always be the executable part, because you expect something to be executable when it's not. Oh, the reverse. You expect it to be executable, but it's not.
And if
But
it's writable, but then we revert the access, is that gonna be an issue? Or how often would that be a case? Or would it, yeah, or actually more like, would it be an issue if it's originally it was intended to be writable, but we revoke that access? Is that gonna be an issue?
I think the question is reversed. If initially it was not writable, we are making it always writable. And if that's an issue, and the only case that I see that might be an issue is,
Right.
for example, for SSH keys, the SSH keys cannot have a write bit on them. But if you're pushing an SSH key in your bundle, that might be a different problem. But I can totally see, like, I think that for this story, let's just add a comment there and say, like, discuss the possibility of keeping the ownership bits when you pick up the story, and then we'll go from there.
Cool.
I think it would be important to know, we don't want to, I don't think we want to propagate a set UID bit. And maybe that's part of what's being protected here. Don't want anything running in any elevated privilege. So that might be a thing. Let's make sure we don't do that accidentally.
Cool. We are at time, but let's see if we can point this one quickly. So 3, 2, 1, shoot. We got 1s and 2s. Does anyone want to share anything in particular? All right, we can go to the majority, which was 2s then. And so we didn't make it to triage topics. Apologies. We'll have to find, well, maybe we can try office hours for that. But
Yeah, I can move those to office hours for later this week.
Cool, thanks.
I did see the second one that was listed there. It looked like it was already closed. I don't know if the other two looked open. I don't know if. I don't know. I'll look into that. Anyways, all right. Thank you for joining today. As a reminder, we are going to meet for the first ever edition of the Carvel office hours, which is later this week on Thursday, March 11th at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to use that time to go over some of the discussion or the other topics that we didn't get to today, as well as any other discussion items that might come up throughout the week, and then also open up to any questions that folks from the community have. If they're also interested in becoming a maintainer, contributing in some way, that's a really good time to participate in that meeting. So we look forward to seeing you then. If not then, we meet every Monday for the Carvel community meetings at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time as well. All right, well, see you next time.